I want to bring out our first guest speaker. He is the CTO for VMware, Ben Fathi. Ben, please come on out. Thank you. Really appreciate it. We also want to bring Manny back out. I don't know if it's obvious, but he's really chronically shy, and we're trying to get him to come out of his shell, so we want to bring him out. Thank you, Manny.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a seat, please.
You want me over here? You want to sit in the middle?
Here, I insist.
All right.
You're my guest.
It's Ben's show.
All right. So, I feel like I'm very far away. We're drifting. Let me slide a little closer to you.
Partners.
Yes, you're always nicer than I am, Manny. So let's get started. Ben, we'll start with the softball, and we'll get things going. So VMware has been putting a lot of energy into the software-defined data center. In fact, when I was standing in the security line at SeaTac Airport, there were VMware banners hanging above me extolling the virtues of the software-defined data center. So the question is, how do you see that architecture changing the way applications are delivered going forward, using the time horizon of your choice, near term, long term?
Thanks. So I'm great to be here. Thank you for having me. And I worked with Manny for several years. We've known each other, and it's great to be partners with him and F5 again from the VMware perspective. So as you said, everything we do these days is about software-defined everything. Software-defined data center, software-defined enterprise. What that means to us is we want to take the intelligence out of the hardware and move it up into the software layer so that we can have more control over it, so we can innovate faster, we can integrate better with our partners, and to enable enterprises and smaller companies to deliver applications to their customers and to their employees. There are really three parts to our strategy. First and foremost is the software-defined data center. That means taking compute, which is what we started with, virtualizing that, adding storage, software-defined storage, as well as networking, software-defined networking, network virtualization. And if you take all three of those, we can run all of that software, all of that logic, really well integrated with our partners using industry standards and APIs, and run it on standard x86 hardware in your data center. Now, on top of that, you build a management layer, automation layer, so you don't want to be managing every single VM, every single application. You want to be doing it with a policy layer that sits on top. That's the software-defined data center vision. Now, you can run that on-prem in your data center, or you can run it up in the cloud. Now, and you can use our cloud or anybody else's. We have been in the public cloud business for many years with our partners with what we call VSPP, the VMware Service Provider Partnerships. And a lot of people don't know this, but we're actually the second largest public cloud provider in the world, if you count all of our partners that are using our software to deliver public cloud services. As of last year, we also started the vCloud Hybrid Service, which is our own public cloud hybrid cloud service. And that allows us to now bring the same set of technologies and infrastructure and capabilities and APIs that you can have on-prem. We can also provide it to you in the cloud. So as I heard Manny speaking earlier, you can burst to the cloud. You can run your applications depending on demand. You can move them around either in the cloud or on-prem. The third part of our strategy is really about what we call end-user computing. Now that you have all of your software and applications running in this either private or public cloud, you want to get all the way out to your customers and employees who are using devices to access that data and access those applications. So we just did an acquisition of a company named AirWatch, which is one of the biggest names in mobile device management, mobile security management. So this allows us to have the entire value chain from where the applications are being deployed in the data center all the way out to your device with the customers. And it's not just about us, VMware, delivering that technology. We also integrate with a lot of our partners. F5 is a great example of that. We've gone and integrated a lot of your technologies, whether it's BigIQ, whether it's the application policy manager, whether it's the gateway technology that you have in our SDDC, in our end-user computing products, in our virtual desktops, as well as in our public cloud. So there's a lot of integration points there, and we believe in standards and partnering with companies like F5 to deliver that value to our partners and customers.
You covered all the bases. So that's it. That's a wrap.
That's it. We're done.
So maybe a question for Manny to run the first leg, and then he can hand the baton to you to take it to the rest of the way. So cut a wide swath there with the software-defined strategy. probably not we had a comedian open up the session. He made a joke about ramen noodles. And it's probably not as simple as just adding water. There are complexities with these architectures, of course, and so there are challenges. And so the question, and maybe Manny, your thoughts before you hand it off to Ben, what sort of challenges do you see customers facing?
I mean, there's lots of them out. There's no question we're trying to make it easier to deploy these applications, and the automation is a big component of that. The raw technology is just taking a different flavor, right? And if you think about it, routing hasn't changed, switching hasn't changed, firewall's a firewall. They're just basically enhancements to those basic concepts that have been built over the years, and they'll continue to get enhanced. What we're doing is we're making it easy for that to be orchestrated. Now, that's simple to do, but it creates a lot of challenges because you're consolidating services inside these infrastructures. That's number one. And we have individuals that have a career developed around managing firewall policy or load balancer policy. So you have operational issues, right, that are out there now that weren't out there before. So I think the reality is the biggest challenge I see is organizational, and I see it's the integration, right, having to do that. The IT shops that are doing the engineering work, they're moving aggressively and pursuing that forward. What I'm seeing there to be a little bit of a slowdown really comes more from the operations side of the house. That has a classic way of doing it and wants to carefully migrate, right? That vision going forward. So a lot of it is really organizational.
Yeah, I agree. I think what we're seeing is there's still a lot of legacy and a lot of inertia in some IT organizations. They want to have control over the operations, and we're seeing developers and some smaller businesses go around the IT. And that's why you no longer have the luxury to go up to a person or file a ticket and wait for them to change your firewall policy or to add a VPN or to manage your network for you. That used to be the way to do it 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but that's no longer acceptable. So the processes have to change, they have to be automated, and the management of the applications, which is really what our joint customers care about, have to be through policy. We have this thing we talk about, we call it pets versus cattle. So
Pets versus cows.
Pets versus cows.
Who says a cow can't be a pet, by the way?
Cows can be pets, I guess, if you're a farmer, but we're not farmers here. So the idea is if you have a few applications, if you have a few servers in your data center, if you're maybe a small business, you treat all those applications as pets. You give them names, you care and feed them, you care about them throughout their life cycle. But if you're in a big business, if you have thousands of applications, the example you just gave, 9,000 applications, that's probably running on a lot of servers. It has a lot of moving parts, it's complex. You don't want to be managing that one application, one VM, one connection, one port at a time. That just doesn't scale. It's too manual, it's too cumbersome. So that's where automation and policy management comes in. That's where, with integration with F5, with things like our NSX platform, you can put in policy, whether it's through APIs with OpenStack or through using our tools or F5's tools. You can provide a model for those applications to be managed through policy. So you can set them up and forget about it, like cattle. Sorry, maybe it's not a good analogy, but the idea is as you scale, as you want your enterprise and your business to scale, you don't want to be managing every single endpoint, every single device. You want to be doing it through policy, and that's where the integration comes in.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add, once you do that once, you could stamp these things out reliably over and over. And it's kind of interesting because we've always been thinking about application delivery from the beginning, and one of the constructs that we created early on was a thing called IAPS. And IAPS is basically a framework that you could define for an application, Exchange being a typical example. And once you have an IAP for Exchange, if you deploy Exchange with the IAP, it's consistent, right? So that's what customers want. I mean, they don't need all the 5,000 nerd knobs, right, to make that thing. What they want is the applications are engineered, they run a certain way, and then you want to reliably stamp those things out, whether it be on-prem or in the cloud or combinations thereof. And I think that's the challenge that we as an industry are going after to solve, and it really requires the whole OSI stack to be automated and orchestrated.
So I won't be the first person that ever said this. It's officially become a cliche, but SDN and cloud are overused terms. The reality is there are a lot of variables in those architectures, a lot of critical nuances, if you will. The permutations run amok, right? So acknowledging that, are there common use cases that you're seeing your customers gravitate to? And if so, what are they? And what sort of insight would you impart upon the audience?
Yeah, there are 3 or 4 examples I can give you that we're seeing with our customers. One example that we announced several months ago that's been very successful is disaster recovery to the cloud. Let's say you're a small or medium business or even an enterprise that has 1 or 2 data centers, but they don't want to set out an entire new data center and replicate all their infrastructure in 2 or 3 locations because it's too cost prohibitive. What they want to do is set up 1 data center, run all their applications, but then their disaster recovery can be in the cloud. So they can have warm standbys in the cloud, and if anything goes wrong with the data center, they flip a switch and they're running in the cloud. Another one is bursting their applications. You know, there are companies that have demands that are bursty. It may be a retail store that, you know, at Christmas time needs to do a lot more than they usually do. It may be a tax accountant that needs more capacity April 15th or in the April timeframe. The examples of like that where you don't want to be allocating the infrastructure for your peak load that's just wasteful. What you would do is look at your normal operations, allocate that on-prem, and then burst to the cloud when you need the additional capacity. Another one is dev test. The example I just gave of developers wanting to go around IT because it's too slow, well, if you have a consistent environment which is managed through APIs and standard interfaces, and you have consistency between your on-prem and cloud experiences, what you can do is carve out, using policy, carve out a piece of that cheaper cloud technology infrastructure without the SLAs for the developers and testers to do their work. And once an app is ready for production, then you can maybe bring it back in-house and use platinum hardware, whether it's storage or networking or compute, to deliver that the SLAs to your customers on-prem. So you see a lot of hybrid scenarios, and I think Manny had one of the last slides he had up there, gave several examples of that. So all of those, we're seeing customers adopting the hybrid technology and wanting to go seamlessly between the public and the private clouds, which is where the connectivity of the networks and the application policy-based management and control comes in, and where you need all the integration between our products.
And some of the collaboration between our companies are within those examples, actually. And so pivoting off of that, I talked a little bit briefly in my preamble about ecosystems. It's our observation, Manny and I talk about this a lot for a couple reasons. One, he's my boss, and 2, it's my job, that the marketplace is seeking friendly ecosystems to drive value. And so we know the answer to this question, but for their benefit, what is VMware doing specifically to foster that kind of collaboration in the marketplace?
So we have been involved in a lot of standards and open source efforts, whether it's de facto standards like Active Directory integration. You know, every enterprise out there runs Active Directory. We have to integrate with it for better authentication, and we do that, obviously. Or whether it's something like OpenStack. We actually, just to give a teaser here, we have our VMworld conference in a couple of weeks, and we have a lot of interesting and exciting announcements to make about our integration and partnership with OpenStack. NSX, our network platform, is one of the biggest pillars of the OpenStack community. We are one of the largest contributors to OpenStack. So we believe we can't deliver everything ourselves as one company. We need all of the different components, whether it's storage, networking, compute, management, public cloud. And to do that, we need to be partnering with others. And a lot of that comes through open source, comes through community, and comes through standards, like the examples I just gave. There's several others. I won't go into details here, but if anybody is interested, in a couple of weeks, we have a lot of exciting announcements to make about OpenStack, about containers, and some of the new workload type application environments you're seeing, Dockers, all of those. We're very much integrated with those ecosystems and trying to enable our customers to take advantage of the services any which way they want and any which way they can build it themselves using an OpenStack, or they can take our completely integrated stack from us.
Customers are driving you in this direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Customers are saying, you know, I don't want to be locked into a single vendor. I want an open platform like an OpenStack, which is really a way of integrating solutions from multiple vendors, and that's fine. You know, what we're finding is customers are going to take an NSX from us for their networking. They may take a blob object store from another company. They may take their policy or management solutions from another one and integrate them all together using an OpenStack framework, and that's fine. I think it's early days still with the OpenStack community. We're seeing a lot of POCs happening right now, not a lot of actual deployments end to end, but in a couple of years it'll be different, and that's fine. You know, as long as it solves the customer's problems, we're fine with that.
I was going to ask you about open standards, and so you touched on that. Thank you preemptively. And so, you know, maybe Manny, for you, anything you would add to what Ben said from the F5?
No, I mean, there's no question. We're founded on open standards. We have to operate under open standards, and we integrate with things like Active Directory, also Oracle Access Manager. We integrate, of course, with your solutions as it pertains to either your cloud solutions for disaster recovery. The list goes on and on. So we are going to be based as a company on open standards. What we do inside is then we can apply policy, right, to these flows much more intelligently. So we see the future where contextualizing a connection and applying policy of that connection is critical. Obviously, for identity and access management, that becomes paramount. You know, user comes in. You throw up a web page, username, password. You check their certificates. Is it a compliant piece of hardware that's been provided by the organization? Does it have the latest virus patches? Right? This is just a few of the things that we do when somebody tries to access that perimeter, and the list goes on and on. A lot of that, if there wasn't open standards of working together, we would be limited in being able to collect that information and applying better policy, right, for that new perimeter that's out there. So yeah, that's a critical element. We look forward to partnerships with VMware and others to continue to drive that in the industry. I think the customer has voted, right? They don't want a vertical one vendor stack.
So a wild card question. There's a Solution Expo downstairs, upstairs, downstairs. And so if the attendees, and they're going to go to the VMware booth to learn about the collaborative posture between the companies.
I hope they do.
Some key things you would ask them to ask about.
I would ask them to take a look at NSX. I think it's very powerful. I think it's one of the most innovative technologies that we've come out with. And I think look at the integration between what we've done with F5 and look at the end-to-end services that they can get and the seamless integration between the private and the public cloud. How can we solve their problems with the set of solutions that we have integrated together? We have blueprints, we have our architectural white papers to explain how they can deploy all these technologies together, best practices that they can take advantage of. I'm sure we'll have those at our booth, and they can play with it. They can see demos. They can see videos of what we can enable together with F5 and our other partners.
So work the staff hard.
What's that?
Work the staff hard.
Yeah,
Make them tired by the time they go to bed tonight.
Yep.
So we have a couple of minutes left. I'm going to give you a couple of options, Ben. You could take the time to say whatever you darn well please, with limits, of course. Or you could ask this gentleman a question. I know you guys have some history. You want to put him on the spot and ask him a question?
So what do you think? What do you think, 5 years from now, where are F5 and VMware going to be in terms of our partnerships and the solutions we provide to our customers?
I think deeply intertwined in customer networks. I mean, we're both leaders in different spaces inside customer networks, and that's going to continue to occur. I don't see that as a drastic shift anytime soon, whether it be the work we're doing on the end user computing side, whether it be somebody trying to create a much more software-defined architecture through orchestration or some elements that are provisioned there. So I actually see it becoming a long roadmap. Just as a quick data point to everybody in the room, we've been working on a roadmap for over a year. I mean, a hard roadmap, integrating different types of technologies together, and the opportunities outnumber the resources. So our CTO, Carl Treves, will come up here tomorrow to speak to you. We keep him pretty challenged with all the levels of integration that are out there.
I think I see him nodding his head up and down.
Yeah, he's probably sweating over there. So I think you'll see the easy button more, right? Yeah. Where you could orchestrate your environments and have that flexibility. And if we do it correctly, you'll have choice, to keep us all honest. I mean, including F5. There's no question that we, as tightly as we want to be integrated, customers want to make sure that if they want to swap F5 for somebody else, that capability is there. So I think customers will have a lot of power, and we'll hopefully make it real simple, and you'll go to managing your business, deploying your applications, increasing the productivity and the value of your corporation versus managing a lot of IT kit.
And I think in radio speak, that's called hitting the post. We're down to our last 30 seconds, so I'll just say thank you, Ben, for making the trip.
Thank you.
Appreciate
It's been great.
Thank you for your partnership, and more importantly, thank you for sharing your industry insight with the audience. So with that, we'll let you start to make your trek home, I believe.
Yeah, I got to get to the airport.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Ben. Really appreciate it.